My best friend burst into my work, sobbing, and made me unlock her phone. When I asked what was going on, she just looked at me with that pleading, desperate face and said, "Please, just do it." I didn't say anything. That was a year ago. Last week, I saw her in the store aisle with dead eyes, and her boyfriend was right beside her, smiling. I was illiterate up until I was 10 years old. Whenever I misspell things when I'm texting, I'll pretend that it was all a joke. Things like I spelled asparagus as asparagus. Sometimes I'll get mad at myself for walking into walls by accident or opening the door too fast. I just always seem to stumble and lose my footing. However, the one thing I take pride in is I always remember everyone's birthdays. That is my one gift in life. And when I say I remember everyone, I mean I remember everyone's. The cashier from a store I used to live beside when I was 4, May 30th, 1999. The librarian who told me I had nothing going on behind the eyes when I was 11, March 19th, 1973. The girl from my high school who threw up on the field trip bus and never came back to school, October 9th, 2004. But unfortunately, this talent isn't enough to pull you through life. So I am currently 22, working 40 hours a week at a local Quick Check with nothing but a nicotine addiction and a high school diploma. But luckily, somehow, this story isn't just about a pity party, because it's a pity party with a happy ending. One day, out of nowhere, a girl came running in so fast that the door slammed against the shelf. Her face was so red and puffy that I could barely recognize who she was. And it wasn't until she started saying my name in between breaths that I figured it out. She was my ex-best friend from senior year. It's not like anything super bad happened between us. She just sort of forgot about me when she moved away for college. But I never stopped thinking about her. Lily didn't even say anything. She just plopped a phone down on the table and told me to unlock it. I was so confused that I couldn't even move. And that's when she told me the password was her boyfriend's grandmother's birthday. There was a sort of fleeting look of desperation in her eyes. So I set aside the craving for an explanation and just put it in. Her little thumbs started moving around so fast you could have sworn they were on fire. Her eyes were glued to the screen. Well, the store was empty. So I figured that was my chance to figure out what was going on and take a peek over her shoulder. Based on the lock screen, I could tell it was her boyfriend's phone, and she was going through his camera roll. I don't know what I expected to see from here. Maybe the nudes of another girl. Maybe a crazy intimacy tape. I don't know. But then she went into his hidden folder, and what we saw made my stomach turn. From there, both of our lives changed forever in the most unexpected way possible. I saw dozens of photos of young women. They were taken from a distance, without the women knowing. Some were at coffee shops, others walking down the street, a few at the gym. My hands started shaking as I recognized faces from around town. The barista at the coffee shop on Main Street, the girl who worked at the bookstore, even Catherine from the community college. Lily's breathing got heavier as she scrolled faster. The timestamps on these photos went back months, some even over a year. Her boyfriend had been doing this long before they'd even met. My memory kicked in as I started recognizing specific dates and locations. That photo of the woman jogging was taken on November 3rd at 6:47 a.m., right by the park where I sometimes went for walks. Another one from September 15th showed a woman leaving the grocery store at 9:23 p.m. Then Lily found a folder labeled targets. Inside were detailed notes about each woman, their daily routines, where they worked, what time they left for lunch, their home addresses pulled from social media posts. Some entries had notes about their relationship status, whether they lived alone, what kind of security their apartment buildings had. My stomach churned as I spotted more familiar faces. These weren't random women. They were all from our community, all within a 10-mile radius of where we stood right now. Lily's hands trembled so badly she nearly dropped the phone. She scrolled to another folder, and that's when we found her own photos, dozens of them, dating back to before she'd even met her boyfriend. Pictures of her at the library, at the grocery store, walking to her car after work. The realization hit her like a physical blow. She stumbled backward, gripping the counter for support. Their entire relationship had been a lie. That chance meeting at the coffee shop hadn't been chance at all. He'd been watching her, studying her routine, waiting for the perfect moment to approach. I reached for the phone to look closer, and that's when I saw myself in one of the photos. It was from 3 months ago, taken outside the Quick Check during my shift break. My blood ran cold. He'd been watching me too, documenting everyone connected to Lily. The photos got worse. Some showed the insides of apartments, taken through windows at night, women in their pajamas, unaware they were being watched. Timestamps showed he'd been inside some of these homes when no one was there, photographing personal items, bedroom layouts, bathroom windows. Lily found his notes app next. A shopping list from last week made my skin crawl. Rope, zip ties, sleeping pills, plastic sheeting, all purchased on the same day as some of the most recent home invasion photos. My exceptional memory connected the dates instantly. These weren't random purchases. We needed to call the police immediately, but Lily started panicking. She'd accessed his phone without permission. Would the evidence even be admissible? Had she contaminated it somehow? Her whole body shook as she tried to think clearly. That's when she told me why she'd found the phone in the first place. Her boyfriend had rushed out claiming there was an emergency at work, but she'd called his office. They said he never showed up. He'd left his phone behind in his hurry, something he never did. It was like he wanted her to find it, or maybe he'd been too focused on wherever he was really going. My memory started working overtime, connecting pieces I hadn't realized were important before. I'd seen his car parked outside the coffee shop on Main Street multiple times when I walked past, outside the bookstore, near the community college, always in spots where he could watch without being noticed. I'd witnessed him stalking these women without even knowing it. Lily admitted things I'd never known about their relationship, how he'd slowly isolated her from friends and family, how he always knew where she was, who she talked to. She thought it was because he cared so much. Now she saw it differently. The way he'd convinced her to delete social media, how he'd suggested she quit her job to focus on their relationship. All of it had been about control. The phone buzzed with a notification from an encrypted messaging app. Someone with the username Hunter2 was asking about Subject 7. They used code names, but cross-referencing with the photos made it clear they were talking about the women. Subject 7 was the barista from Main Street. I realized I hadn't seen her at the coffee shop in over a week. Lily's face went white as she found his calendar. Tonight at 11 p.m., he had something marked as Hunting Season Begins. The address matched one of the apartments from the home invasion photos. We checked the time. It was already past 8 p.m., less than 3 hours. The GPS history on his phone painted an even darker picture. Multiple trips trips to remote wooded areas outside town. The timestamps matched up with something that made my blood freeze. I remembered seeing missing person posts on social media. 3 women from neighboring towns over the past few months. Women who looked similar to the ones in his photos. The dates lined up perfectly with his trips to those isolated locations. My memory for details was finally useful for something important. I could connect every piece of evidence, every date, every location. 3 women from his photos hadn't posted on social media in weeks. Their last posts were all within days of his wilderness trips. This wasn't just stalking anymore. Lily found text messages between her boyfriend and Hunter, too, discussing disposal methods and cleanup. They talked about their subjects like objects, rating them on vulnerability, discussing which ones lived alone, which ones had predictable schedules. The clinical nature of their conversations made it clear this was planned, methodical. His location sharing was still on. The phone showed he was currently at the address marked for tonight's hunt. We had to assume someone was in immediate danger, but calling the police meant explaining how we got this information. It meant Lily admitting she'd broken into his phone. It meant potentially losing the evidence on technicalities. The phone contained detailed floor plans of the target's apartment, security camera blind spots mapped out, the victim's work schedule for the next month, somehow obtained, notes about her habits, when she showered, when she typically went to bed. The level of landing was terrifying. Time was running out. Whatever he planned to do was happening tonight. We couldn't wait for police bureaucracy. Someone's life hung in the balance, but we were just 2 people who'd stumbled onto something massive. How could we stop him? How could we save whoever Subject 7 was? Lily made the decision to call 911, but the response wasn't what we'd hoped. The operator transferred her multiple times. Officers were skeptical about stolen phone evidence. They wanted her to bring the phone to the station for proper documentation, proper channels, proper procedures, all while someone might be dying. I grabbed the phone and found Subject 7's number in his contacts. We tried calling directly, but it went straight to voicemail. The recorded message sounded strange, forced, like someone had made her record it under duress. My memory caught the subtle tremor in her voice, the way she paused oddly between words. His messages revealed weeks of manipulation. He'd been adjusting Subject 7's work schedule through anonymous complaints to her manager, ensuring she'd be home alone tonight, making sure her roommate would be out of town, creating the perfect opportunity for whatever he had planned. Lily started recognizing the manipulation tactics he'd used on her, the way he'd twisted situations, made her question her own memory, her own perceptions. She realized some of her memory issues might have been from times he'd drugged her, those nights she couldn't quite remember, when she'd wake up feeling strange. The photos showed he had keys to multiple apartments, or maybe lockpicking tools. The invasions weren't random opportunities. They were calculated entries into spaces he'd studied for weeks. My memory placed several of his car sightings near these same buildings on the nights of the invasions. His notes used code names for locations too, but growing up here, I recognized the landmarks. Eagle's Nest was the overlook by the Old Quarry. The Pit was the abandoned mine shaft everyone avoided, places where someone could disappear without being found for a long time. The level of surveillance was staggering. He'd documented security guard rotations at apartment complexes, noted which units had dogs, which residents worked night shifts. When maintenance crews came through, it was like reading the playbook of someone who'd turned stalking into a science. That's when Lily found photos of herself sleeping, dozens of them, taken in her own bed, in her own apartment. She hadn't known. The violation of it made her rush to the bathroom. I heard her getting sick, the reality of what she'd been living with finally hitting her. When she came back, we found evidence that made everything worse. He'd been selling some of the photos online, creating packages of information about the women, their routines, their vulnerabilities, their addresses, building a network of predators who shared tips and targets. This wasn't just one sick person, it was a system. His GPS showed movement. He was heading somewhere new. We checked the route and my blood went cold. He was driving toward our location, toward the quick check. He must have realized his phone was missing. He knew where Lily would go. He was coming for us. I watched the GPS dot moving closer on the screen. My hands fumbled with the store's door locks while Lily frantically scrolled through more evidence. The boyfriend's car would arrive in minutes based on his current speed. I turned off the main lights, leaving only the emergency lighting on. The store's security cameras would record everything, but that might help us later. Lily discovered a folder containing edited photos. Her boyfriend had been digitally removing himself from surveillance footage at various locations. The timestamps matched the stalking incidents perfectly. He'd studied each location's camera angles beforehand, positioning himself to minimize exposure while maximizing his view of the targets. The phone revealed browser history showing extensive research on each woman, social media deep dives going back years, public records searches, background checks using paid services. He'd compiled psychological profiles, noting personality traits, fears, and vulnerabilities based on their online presence. I remembered seeing him at the community center last month during a self-defense class for women. At the time, I thought nothing of it. Now I realized he'd been studying their techniques, learning what they were taught, figuring out how to counter their training. My memory placed him there for 3 consecutive weeks. Lily found payment records for multiple storage units around town. The receipts dated back 2 years. Whatever he'd been collecting, he'd needed space to keep it. The thought of what might be in those units made my stomach turn. Evidence of previous victims? Equipment for his hunts? We had no way to know. His car appeared in the parking lot. Through the window, I saw him circle slowly, checking for Lily's vehicle. She'd parked behind the building, but he'd find it soon. We moved toward the back office, keeping low. The phone screen's light seemed too bright in the darkened store. More messages appeared from Hunter too. They were getting impatient about tonight's plans. The conversation revealed they'd done this before, multiple times. They discussed previous successes using code words that made me sick. My memory connected their timeline to several unsolved cases from neighboring counties. Lily discovered her boyfriend had installed tracking software on her devices months ago. Every text, every call, every location she'd visited was logged in his cloud storage. He'd been monitoring her communications, screening her contacts, subtly controlling who remained in her life. The back door rattled. He was checking all entrances. We huddled in the office, trying to stay silent. Lily's breathing was ragged with panic. I grabbed cleaning supplies from the shelf, anything that might serve as a weapon. The phone showed he'd stopped moving, probably listening for sounds inside. His notes revealed he'd he'd been practicing breaking into apartments using lockpicking tutorials and tools ordered online. He'd started with abandoned buildings, documenting his improving times. The progression showed someone systematically developing criminal skills over months of dedicated practice. I heard glass breaking near the front entrance. He was coming in. We had seconds to decide our next move. The office had no other exit. Lily clutched the phone, evidence of everything, while I gripped a bottle of industrial cleaner. Neither of us were fighters, but we couldn't just surrender. The boyfriend moved through the store methodically. His footsteps were careful, deliberate. He knew the layout from visiting Lily here. I remembered him bringing her lunch several times, always so thoughtful and caring. Now those visits seemed like reconnaissance missions. Lily found an audio recording app on his phone with dozens of files. She played one at minimum volume. It was her voice, talking in her sleep. He'd been recording her unconscious mumblings, analyzing them for information. Other files contained recordings of the stalked women's phone conversations, somehow intercepted. His shadow passed by the office door. We held our breath. The door was locked, but that might not stop someone who'd been practicing breaking and entering. Lily's hand found mine in the darkness. We waited, every second stretching endlessly. The phone buzzed with an incoming call from Hunter 2. The vibration seemed impossibly loud. We heard footsteps stop, then turn toward the office. He'd heard it. The doorknob rattled as he tested it, then silence. We knew he was picking the lock. Lily quickly forwarded everything she could to her own cloud storage, creating backups of the evidence. Her fingers flew across the screen even as we heard the subtle clicks of lockpicks working. My memory cataloged every sound, every moment, knowing we might need to testify about this later. The door opened slowly. His silhouette filled the frame, backlit by the emergency lighting. He didn't speak, just stood there watching us. Lily held up the phone, showing him we'd seen everything. His expression didn't change. If anything, he seemed amused. He stepped into the office, closing the door behind him. His movements were calm, controlled. This wasn't the panicked reaction of someone caught in the act. This was someone who'd planned for this possibility. My grip tightened on the cleaning bottle. Lily tried to move past him, but he blocked her easily. Not aggressively, just positioning himself between us and the exit. He held out his hand for the phone. She shook her head. He smiled, an expression that made my skin crawl. He pulled out a second phone from his pocket and showed us the screen. It displayed a live feed from a camera. Subject 7's apartment. She was home, unaware of the danger. His finger hovered over a message app, ready to send something to Hunter 2. The threat was clear without words. Give back the phone or Subject 7 would pay the price. Lily's hand shook as she weighed the options. Evidence versus an innocent life. Justice versus immediate safety. The choice was impossible. I made a decision that surprised everyone, including myself. I sprayed the industrial cleaner directly at his face. He recoiled, cursing as his eyes burned. Lily and I rushed past him, through the store, toward the exit. Behind us, we heard him recovering, following. We burst out of the store into the parking lot. Lily's car was blocked by his vehicle. We ran toward the street, hoping to flag down help. The phone in Lily's hand contained everything we needed to stop him, but only if we could get it to the right people. He emerged from the store, eyes red and watering but still functional. He moved toward his car, probably to pursue us. That's when we heard sirens. Multiple police cars were approaching. Someone must have reported the break-in, but instead of running, he did something unexpected. He calmly walked to his car and leaned against it, pulling out his second phone. By the time the police arrived, he was already on a call. His demeanor completely transformed into that of a concerned boyfriend. The officers approached cautiously. He immediately started talking, gesturing toward us. I couldn't hear the words, but his body language suggested worry, confusion, hurt. He was playing victim. Lily tried to show the officers the phone, but they were more focused on securing the scene. One officer took Lily aside while another questioned him. A third approached me. The industrial cleaner in my hand suddenly looked like evidence against me, not him. I tried to explain, but the officer kept interrupting with procedural questions. From across the parking lot, I watched him talking animatedly with the officer. He pulled out his wallet, showing ID, probably establishing himself as a concerned citizen. His performance was flawless. The officer's body language shifted from suspicious to sympathetic. Lily was getting frustrated with her officer. She kept trying to show the phone evidence, but he was more concerned with why she had someone else's phone. The legal complications were already beginning. Our evidence was tainted by how we'd obtained it. More police arrived, including a detective. The situation was escalating beyond a simple break-in call. The boyfriend had shifted the narrative. Now we were the ones who needed to explain our actions. He'd turned our discovery into our crime. The detective separated all of us for individual questioning. I was placed in the back of a patrol car, not arrested, but definitely not free to leave. Through the window, I watched him continue his performance, occasionally wiping his still irritated eyes for effect. Time passed slowly. I saw Lily in another patrol car, still clutching the phone. She looked defeated. The boyfriend stood with a detective, paperwork in hand. He was probably filing complaints against us. Theft, assault, breaking and entering, even though he'd done the actual breaking. My memory replayed every detail of what we'd found. The evidence was overwhelming, but only if authorities would look at it properly. Instead, we were being treated as the aggressors. He'd successfully flipped the script before we could establish the truth. An officer finally came to take my statement. I tried to explain about the stalking, the photos, the planned attack tonight, but without the phone in hand, it sounded like paranoid rambling. The officer took notes but seemed skeptical. Why would I have such detailed knowledge of someone else's activities? They brought us to the station for formal statements. The boyfriend arrived separately, still playing the wounded party. He'd changed clothes somehow, looking respectable and concerned. We still wore our work clothes, looking disheveled and suspicious. The detective interviewed me for hours. Every detail I provided from memory seemed to make things worse. How did I know exact dates and times? Why was I paying such close attention to this man's activities? My gift for remembering details was being twisted into evidence of obsession. Lily's interview was going worse. They'd found the tracking software on her devices, but he'd convinced them she'd installed it herself to spy on him. Her history of memory problems was being used to discredit her. Every truth we told was being inverted. They finally examined the phone, but the boyfriend had an explanation ready. The photos were for an art project about urban life. The notes were research for a novel he was writing. The tracking software was for finding his phone if lost. Every damning piece of evidence had an innocent explanation prepared. The storage unit receipts were explained as holding his deceased grandmother's belongings. The lockpicking tools were a hobby, perfectly legal illegal to own. The surveillance notes were writing research. He had documentation to support every lie, prepared long in advance. Hunter 2 was explained as an online friend from a photography forum. Their coded conversations were about camera equipment and shot locations. The boyfriend had screenshots of legitimate photography discussions to support this claim. He'd built an elaborate cover story for everything. Subject 7 was contacted by police. She confirmed she was safe at home, unaware of any threat. Without context, the evidence looked like creative fiction rather than criminal planning. The boyfriend's calm demeanor contrasted sharply with our frantic accusations. They released him after a few hours with apologies for the inconvenience. He left with promises to not press charges if we got help for our obvious mental health issues. The detective seemed relieved to close what appeared to be a case of relationship drama rather than criminal conspiracy. Lily and I were held longer. They debated charging us with theft and assault. The only thing that saved us was the store's security footage showing him breaking in first. But that just shifted the narrative from us being criminals to us being vigilantes who'd overreacted to a worried boyfriend looking for his phone. By the time we were released, it was past 3 a.m. Subject 7's apartment had been watched by police, but nothing happened. Either we'd disrupted the plan or it had never existed. Without an actual crime, our evidence looked like elaborate fantasy. Lily's boyfriend was waiting outside the station. He approached her with fake concern, offering to drive her home to talk things through. Other officers watched, seeing a caring boyfriend trying to help his troubled girlfriend. The gaslighting was happening in real time, in public, with witnesses. She backed away from him, toward my car. He followed, speaking softly, reaching for her hand. Every gesture calculated to look caring to observers while being threatening to her. I stepped between them, and he shifted his attention to me. He thanked me for looking after Lily during her episode. His words were carefully chosen, establishing a narrative where she was unstable, and he was the long-suffering boyfriend. Several officers were still watching from the station entrance. We drove away in silence. The phone was still in evidence, but copies of everything existed in Lily's cloud storage. The question was what to do with it. The police route had failed spectacularly. He'd anticipated and prepared for that possibility. Lily stayed at my apartment that night, too afraid to go home. She knew he had keys. We barricaded the door with furniture and took turns keeping watch. Neither of us slept. Every sound in the hallway made us jump. Morning brought new problems. Lily's phone exploded with messages from mutual friends. Her boyfriend had reached out to their social circle, expressing concern about her mental health. He'd shared just enough detail to make her look unstable while maintaining his image as the caring partner. Social media turned against her quickly. People who'd known them as a couple sided with him. His story was simpler, easier to believe. A girlfriend who'd become paranoid and controlling versus an elaborate stalking conspiracy. Occam's razor worked in his favor. I went to work because I needed the money, but concentrating was impossible. Every customer who entered made me nervous. Was he watching? Had he identified me as a threat to eliminate? My manager noticed my distraction and sent me home early. Lily tried reaching out to the women in the photos, warning them directly. Most didn't respond. Those who did were skeptical or hostile. One threatened to call the police on her for harassment. The boyfriend had poisoned the well so thoroughly that his victims would now defend him. We researched legal options, but every lawyer we consulted said the same thing. The evidence was obtained illegally. His explanations, while suspicious, created reasonable doubt. Without a crime actually being committed, there was nothing to prosecute. We'd need something more concrete. Days passed in paranoid tension. Lily found evidence that her apartment had been entered while we were at the police station. Nothing stolen, but subtle things moved. Photos repositioned. Drawers not quite closed properly. He was sending a message that he could reach her anytime. I started noticing his car in places it shouldn't be. Outside my work, near my apartment. Always just far enough away to be plausibly coincidental. My memory tracked patterns in his appearances. He was studying my routine now, adding me to his collection. Lily discovered he'd already started controlling the narrative about their break. He told everyone she'd had a mental breakdown, that he was giving her space to heal. Friends reached out to her with sympathy for her condition and praise for his patience. The gaslighting campaign was in full effect. We tried connecting with Hunter 2 through the messaging app, hoping to gather more evidence, but the account had vanished. All traces of their conversations were gone except for what we'd screenshot. He was covering tracks, eliminating loose ends. The women from neighboring towns who'd gone missing remained missing. We'd reported our suspicions, but without concrete evidence linking him to their disappearances, police in those jurisdictions weren't interested. Our credibility was already shot from the first incident. Lily's mental health deteriorated under the pressure. She stopped eating, barely slept, jumped at every sound. The constant gaslighting from their social circle made her question her own perceptions. Maybe she was crazy. Maybe she'd imagined the threat in those photos. I used my memory to create detailed timelines of everything we'd discovered, but documentation felt futile. Who would believe us? He'd crafted such an elaborate cover story, backed by a community who saw him as the victim. We were alone in knowing the truth. 2 weeks after the incident, Subject 7 disappeared. She didn't show up for work. Her roommate returned to find the apartment empty. No signs of struggle. Police investigated but found no evidence of foul play. She'd simply vanished, like the others. The boyfriend had an alibi, of course. Multiple witnesses placed him at a work function that night. Security footage confirmed his presence. Either Hunter 2 had acted alone, or there were more accomplices than we'd realized. The network was bigger than just 2 people. Lily attempted sewers lied 3 days later. I found her in time, called an ambulance. At the hospital, she was placed on psychiatric hold. The boyfriend showed up, playing the concerned partner perfectly. He told doctors about her recent paranoid delusions and history of mental instability. I wasn't allowed to see her. I wasn't family. He was still listed as her emergency contact. He controlled access to her, controlled the narrative about her condition. The medical staff saw him as the caring boyfriend dealing with a troubled partner. My protests only made me look unstable too. The psychiatric hold was extended based on his input. He provided doctors with examples of her delusional behavior, twisting every attempt to expose him into symptoms of mental illness. The system designed to protect her was being weaponized against her. I tried reaching out to her family, but he'd gotten there first. He'd been in contact for weeks, expressing concern, building rapport. They trusted him more than her. When I tried to explain the truth, they saw me as enabling her delusions. My own life began unraveling. Coworkers started treating me differently. Word had spread about the incident. I was the one who'd assaulted an innocent man with cleaning chemicals, who'd helped a mentally ill woman steal from her boyfriend. My manager suggested I take some time off. The isolation was deliberate and effective. Cut off from support systems, dismissed by authorities, disbelieved by community. This was how predators operated in plain sight, not through dramatic confrontations, but through systematic destruction of their opposition's credibility. I kept monitoring the missing persons reports from surrounding areas. 2 more women vanished that month, similar profiles to the ones in his photos. Young, living alone, routines documented in social media posts. The pattern was clear to me, but invisible to everyone else. His car appeared outside my apartment more frequently. Sometimes I'd see him sitting in it, just watching. When I called police, he'd be gone before they arrived. The reports made me look paranoid. Each call further damaged my credibility. I installed security cameras, changed my locks, varied my routines, but the fear was constant. He knew where I lived, where I worked, who my friends were. My exceptional memory became a curse, cataloging every potential threat, every possible vulnerability. 3 weeks into Lily's hospitalization, I finally got a call from her. She sounded sedated, defeated. She told me she was getting better, that she understood now that she'd been confused. The words sounded rehearsed. I knew he was there, listening, coaching her. She asked me to stop trying to help, said I was making things worse, that she needed to focus on healing. Every word was wrong, but what could I do? Fighting would only prove their point about my instability. I had to let her go. The boyfriend began appearing at my work as a customer. Always polite, always friendly. He'd make small talk about how Lily was doing, how concerned he was about her. My coworker saw a nice guy dealing with a difficult situation. I saw a predator marking his territory. I found a tracker on my car one morning, magnetic, hidden in the wheel well. How long had it been there? How much of my movement had he monitored? I left it in place, not wanting him to know I'd found it. Better to know how he was watching than wonder. The evidence in Lily's cloud storage remained, but what good was it? We'd already played that card and lost. The police had seen it all and found innocent explanations. The community had chosen their narrative. Truth was irrelevant against a well-crafted lie. I started researching similar cases online, found forums for people who'd been stalked, gaslit, disbelieved. The patterns were always similar. Credibility destroyed, isolation enforced, systems meant to protect turned into weapons. Many stories ended badly. A month after Subject 7 vanished, her body was found, not by police, but by hikers in a remote area. The location matched one of his GPS coordinates, but he'd been clever. No physical evidence linked him to the scene. The coroner ruled it death by misadventure. The boyfriend posted a touching memorial on social media about the tragedy, how the community needed to come together, support each other. People praised his compassion. I wanted to scream the truth, but who would listen to the unstable person who'd assaulted him? Lily was released from the hospital into his care. I saw them together at the grocery store. She looked hollow, medicated, a ghost of herself. He kept a protective arm around her, the image of a devoted boyfriend. She didn't acknowledge me. I learned later he'd convinced her to sign power of attorney over to him while she was hospitalized, for her own protection, of course. Now he controlled her finances, her medical decisions, her life, all legally, all with the system's blessing. My manager finally fired me. Too many complaints about my erratic behavior, too much drama surrounding me. I couldn't blame them. From the outside, I looked like someone having a breakdown. Only I knew the breakdown was being deliberately induced. Without income, I couldn't maintain my apartment. I moved in with my parents 2 towns over. They were concerned but supportive. I didn't tell them the full truth. How could I? It sounded insane even to me sometimes, and I'd lived it. The tracker on my car disappeared one day. He didn't need it anymore. I was neutralized, discredited, removed from the equation. Lily was under his control. The other women remained unaware of their danger. He'd won completely. But I kept watching the news, kept tracking missing persons reports, kept documenting patterns only I could see. 3 more women vanished over the next 2 months, all fitting the profile, all from areas he'd visited according to that GPS history. I created anonymous tip lines, sent evidence to journalists, tried reaching authorities in different jurisdictions. Nothing took hold. Without credibility, truth was just noise. He'd destroyed my ability to be believed before I could destroy his ability to harm. The system had worked exactly as he'd planned. Every safeguard became a tool in his hands. Every attempt to stop him reinforced his victim narrative. He'd turned justice into his accomplice, society into his shield. And somewhere, Hunter 2 was still active. I thought about Lily often, wondered if she remembered the truth beneath the medication and manipulation, if she ever had moments of clarity where she knew what he was, if she was even still alive. The not knowing was its own torture. My memory, once my only gift, became my burden. I remembered every detail of every woman in those photos, every timestamp that correlated with a disappearance, every piece of evidence that pointed to ongoing crimes, all useless without anyone to believe it. The boyfriend expanded his social media presence, posted about mental health awareness, supporting partners with psychological issues. He gave talks at community centers about dealing with difficult relationships. Each appearance strengthened his image as a compassionate victim. I recognized the patterns in his posts, subtle recruitment for new targets. Women who commented sympathetically would later appear in missing persons reports, but the connections were visible only to someone tracking everything, remembering every detail, only to me. 6 months after that night at the Quick Check, I saw a news report. A storage unit facility had caught fire, several units destroyed. The location matched one from his receipts. Convenient timing. Whatever evidence might have been there was now ash. He'd learned from our attempt to expose him, covered his tracks better. The photos, the notes, the trophies, whatever he'd kept was gone, or moved to locations we'd never found. He was evolving, adapting, becoming more careful. I tried one last time to help Lily, sent a message through a mutual acquaintance, just letting her know I was thinking of her, that I believed her, that what we'd seen was real. The response came from him, not her. A cease and desist letter from his lawyer. The threat was clear. Stop trying to contact her or face harassment charges. He'd built enough of a case against me to make it stick. The girl who'd assaulted him, who'd helped steal his property, who'd continued stalking him, truth inverted completely. So I stopped. Not because I believed his version of events, but because fighting was futile. He'd won every battle by making the battlefield favor him. The system, society, even Lily herself had become his weapons. What could one person with a good memory do against them? that. I kept my documentation, though. Detailed records of everything we'd discovered, everything I'd observed since. Maybe someday someone would believe it. Maybe someday one of his victims would escape and need proof they weren't crazy. Maybe someday the truth would matter. But for now, I lived in exile from my own life, working minimum wage jobs where no one knew my history, watching from afar as he continued his hunting, remembering every detail, every date, every face, carrying the weight of truth no one wanted to hear. The worst part was knowing it would continue. More women would vanish, more lives would be destroyed, and he'd remain the compassionate boyfriend, the mental health advocate, the victim of false accusations, protected by the very systems meant to stop him. My gift for remembering birthdays felt like a cruel joke now. I remembered his victims' birthdays too, celebrated them alone, silent memorials for women the world had forgotten. May 30th, March 19th, October 9th, dates that meant nothing to anyone but me. Sometimes I wondered if Lily remembered my birthday, if somewhere beneath the medication and manipulation, she marked the date, if she ever thought about that night when we'd tried to save everyone and ended up saving no one, if she blamed me for failing her. The story should have ended differently. The evidence should have mattered. The truth should have won. But real life doesn't guarantee happy endings. Sometimes the predators are smarter than the prey. Sometimes the systems fail. Sometimes memory isn't enough. He was still out there, still hunting, still protected by the narrative he'd crafted. And I was still here, remembering everything, believed by no one. 2 lives changed forever, just like I'd said at the beginning, just not in the way anyone would have hoped. The quick check where it all started had new staff now. No one remembered that night. It was just another story that got distorted in the telling. The crazy ex-girlfriend and her friend who'd attacked an innocent man. Local drama, quickly forgotten, but I remembered every photo, every timestamp, every woman who'd vanished after appearing in his collection, every detail that painted a picture no one wanted to see. My exceptional memory, my one gift, had become my curse. Knowing the truth when truth didn't matter. The happy ending I'd promised at the beginning felt like another life. Before I knew that monsters could wear human faces and convince the world they were victims. Before I learned that evidence meant nothing without credibility. Before I understood that sometimes the bad guys win, all I could do was watch, document, remember, hope that someday, somehow, someone would listen, that the patterns would become too obvious to ignore, that justice would eventually catch up to him, that Lily would find a way to escape, that the hunting would end. But hope felt fragile against the reality I'd lived. The system had failed. Society had chosen comfortable lies over uncomfortable truths, and somewhere tonight, another woman was probably being added to his collection. Another birthday for me to remember. Another victim the world would forget. The morning after my manager fired me, I packed my belongings into cardboard boxes while my former coworkers avoided eye contact. Word had spread about my unstable behavior and assault on Lily's boyfriend. The quick check felt different now, tainted by that night's events. My hands shook as I cleared out my locker, finding old birthday reminders I'd written for coworkers. None of them mattered anymore. My parents picked me up in their old sedan. They asked gentle questions during the drive to their house 2 towns over, but I gave vague answers about needing a fresh start. My mother kept glancing at me in the rearview mirror with worried eyes. My father's jaw stayed tight the whole ride. They knew something serious had happened but respected my silence. The spare bedroom at their house felt like stepping back in time. Same faded wallpaper from when I was 12. Same creaky floorboard by the window. I unpacked slowly, placing my few possessions around the room. My laptop went on the old desk where I'd struggled with reading assignments years ago. The irony wasn't lost on me. Days blurred together in unemployment. I applied for jobs at grocery stores, gas stations, anywhere that would hire someone with a gap in employment and no references. Each application asked about criminal history. I had to check yes for the assault charge, even though it had been dropped. The box might as well have said unhireable. My memory wouldn't let me forget the evidence we'd found. Every morning, I woke up reciting dates and locations from those photos. November 3rd at 6:47 a.m., September 15th at 9:23 p.m., the abandoned quarry, the old mine shaft, women's faces I'd recognized but couldn't help. My gift had become a prison of useless knowledge. 3 weeks into living with my parents, I saw a news article about another missing woman, Catherine Chen, age 24, last seen leaving her job at a bookstore. The photo showed a young woman with a bright smile. I recognized her immediately. She'd been in the boyfriend's photos, labeled as Target 12. My stomach churned as I closed the laptop. I created a new anonymous email account and sent the article to local police with details about the connection. The response came back quickly. They thanked me for my concern, but noted that my previous harassment of an innocent man made my tips unreliable. They suggested I seek professional help for my obsessive behavior. My mother started leaving pamphlets around the house, mental health resources, support groups for people dealing with trauma. She meant well, but each pamphlet felt like another nail in the coffin of my credibility. Even my own family thought I needed help, not that I was trying to help others. The boyfriend's social media presence grew stronger. He posted inspirational quotes about overcoming adversity, photos of him volunteering at women's shelters, speaking at support groups. Each post garnered hundreds of supportive comments. People called him brave for sharing his story of being stalked by his ex-girlfriend and her friend. I watched from fake accounts as he built his new persona, the compassionate advocate, the survivor, the man who turned personal trauma into purpose. Women commented about how his story helped them recognize toxic behavior in their own relationships. He responded to each one personally, building connections, gaining trust. One evening, I noticed a pattern in his interactions. 3 women who'd commented frequently on his posts had gone silent. Their profiles showed no activity for weeks. I cross-referenced their photos with my memory of the evidence. All 3 had appeared in his collection. All 3 lived within driving distance of his new apartment. My documentation grew more detailed but remained pointless. I created spreadsheets linking disappearances to his movements, mapped locations where women had vanished against his GPS history from that night, built timelines showing how each woman had interacted with him online before disappearing. All of it meant nothing without someone willing to listen. The storage unit fire made local news again when investigators found suspicious accelerant patterns, but without evidence of what had been stored there. It remained just another case of vandalism. The boyfriend posted about the loss of his grandmother's belongings, garnering more sympathy from his growing audience. 6 months passed. I found work work at a warehouse loading trucks at night. The pay was minimal, but the solitude was welcome. No one asked questions about my past. No one cared about my memory for birthdays. I could disappear into repetitive physical labor and try to forget, but forgetting was impossible. Every news report about a missing woman triggered my memory. I'd recall if she'd been in those photos, if her routine had been documented, if she'd commented on his posts. The connections were clear to me, but invisible to everyone else. Truth had become my secret burden. Lily surfaced briefly on social media through a friend's account. A photo from someone's birthday dinner showed her in the background. She looked thin, her eyes unfocused. The boyfriend's arm was around her waist, holding her close. The friend's caption mentioned how sweet it was that he took such good care of her despite her ongoing struggles. I wanted to reach out but remembered the cease and desist letter. Any contact would result in legal action. He'd isolated her completely, legally, with the full support of everyone who mattered. The system designed to protect victims had been weaponized against her. My parents grew increasingly concerned about my isolation. They suggested therapy, activities, anything to get me engaged with life again. I went through the motions of normalcy for their sake, joined them for dinners, watched movies together, pretended the weight of unheard truth wasn't crushing me. The warehouse job ended when they downsized. I found another at a distribution center, then another at a loading dock. Each job was the same. Physical labor that exhausted my body while my mind raced with useless memories. Each paycheck just enough to contribute to my parents' bills and nothing more. A year after that night at the Quick Check, Subject 7's family held a memorial service. The news coverage was brief. Young woman tragically lost to misadventure. No signs of foul play. Case closed. The boyfriend attended, offering condolences, playing the role of community supporter. No one questioned why he was there. I documented everything from a distance. His attendance at the memorial, his new connections with the grieving family, the way he positioned himself as someone who understood loss. My files grew thicker but remained hidden. Evidence without an audience was just paper. More women vanished. Not all at once. Not in ways that created patterns visible to anyone but me. A jogger here. A night shift worker there. Always women who'd interacted with him online. Always women whose routines he'd documented. The predator had refined his methods, learned from our attempt to stop him. Hunter, too, remained a ghost. No trace of the accomplice beyond those deleted messages. I wondered sometimes if there were others. If the boyfriend had built a network of predators sharing information and targets. If what we'd discovered was just one cell of something larger. The thought kept me awake at night. My exceptional memory became a curse in job interviews. I'd recall every detail about the interviewer. Their birthday mentioned in passing. Their kids' names from family photos on their desk. It came across as creepy, obsessive. The very trait that had once been my only gift now marked me as unstable. Lily's social media presence vanished entirely. Friends posted concerned messages asking if anyone had heard from her. The boyfriend responded to each one, explaining she was focusing on her mental health and had chosen to disconnect from social media. He thanked everyone for their concern and assured them she was getting the help she needed. I knew what that meant. Complete isolation, no outside contact, no way for her to reach out for help. He'd eliminated every avenue of escape while maintaining the image of a caring partner. The perfect prison built from medical recommendations and social sympathy. 2 years passed. I moved between temporary jobs, each one ending when my obsessive nature became apparent. Coworkers complained about my memory for personal details. Managers worried about liability. The assault charge, though dropped, followed me through background checks. I became unemployable in any meaningful way. The boyfriend published a book about surviving false accusations and supporting partners with mental illness. Local bookstores hosted signings. He donated proceeds to women's shelters. The media coverage was glowing. A man who'd turned personal trauma into advocacy. No one investigated the women who'd gone missing after interacting with him online. I attended one signing from a distance, watching through the bookstore window. He looked confident, polished. The crowd hung on his every word. Women lined up to share their own stories, to thank him for his bravery. He listened with practiced compassion, collecting new targets while playing savior. My parents aged visibly from worry. Their son, who'd once had such a good memory, now seemed lost in paranoid delusions. They stopped mentioning therapy directly, but left brochures in increasingly obvious places. I pretended not to notice, just as they pretended not to notice my late-night documentation sessions. The third anniversary of that night arrived with another disappearance. A barista from a coffee shop 2 towns over. She'd served him regularly, according to her coworkers. Always friendly, always left good tips. Then one day she didn't show up for work. Her apartment was empty. No signs of struggle. Another woman vanished without explanation. I'd seen her in those original photos. Target 23. He'd documented her schedule, her route home, her weekend routines, 3 years of patience before striking, the long game of a predator who'd learned to be careful. My memory held all the evidence, but evidence without credibility was worthless. Local police formed a task force to investigate the string of disappearances. The boyfriend volunteered as a community liaison, offering his expertise in women's safety from his advocacy work. They welcomed his involvement, the fox guarding the henhouse, and everyone applauding his dedication. I watched from the margins as he shaped the investigation, suggested areas to search that led nowhere, offered profiles of potential suspects that matched no one, comforted families while knowing exactly what had happened to their daughters. The performance was flawless. My final attempt to help came through an anonymous letter to a journalist who'd covered the disappearances. I included everything: dates, locations, connections to the boyfriend, patterns only visible to someone with perfect recall. The response was a published article about conspiracy theorists hindering real investigations with elaborate false narratives. The boyfriend referenced the article in his next social media post. He expressed sympathy for people whose trauma led them to see patterns where none existed, offered resources for those struggling with paranoid delusions, positioned himself once again as the compassionate voice of reason against dangerous conspiracy thinking. That night, I sat in my childhood bedroom surrounded by boxes of useless documentation. 3 years of evidence that no one would ever believe. 3 years of watching a predator operate with impunity. 3 years of knowing the truth while being labeled as the dangerous one. My parents found me the next morning organizing everything into neat piles: police reports, news articles, timeline spreadsheets, maps with locations marked. They watched silently as I placed it all in a storage box and sealed it shut. My mother's eyes were wet. My father's hands shook. I took a job at a factory an hour away. Night shifts where no one expected conversation. I stopped checking news reports about missing women. Stopped tracking the boyfriend's social media. Stopped believing that truth mattered more than perception. The world had made its choice. But my memory remained perfect. Every birthday, every face, every woman who'd vanished after appearing in those photos. May 30th, March 19th, October 9th. Dates that marked absence rather than celebration. I carried them silently. A memorial no one else would keep. The boyfriend's influence grew. Speaking engagements, consulting work with law enforcement, a second book, a podcast about supporting partners through mental health crises. Each platform expanded his reach, his access to vulnerable women, his ability to shape narratives. The system hadn't just failed to stop him. It had empowered him. Somewhere, Lily existed in whatever prison he'd built for her. Medicated, isolated, possibly aware of the truth but unable to voice it. Or maybe the gaslighting had worked completely. Maybe she believed his version of events now. Maybe she thought I was the dangerous one who'd tried to destroy her relationship. I thought about her on her birthday, December 15th, wondered if she remembered mine. February 3rd, 2 dates among thousands in my memory, but these carried weight. We'd tried to save everyone and saved no one, not even ourselves. The factory work was steady, predictable. I loaded boxes onto trucks in perfect patterns, my memory making me efficient at repetitive tasks. Supervisors praised my consistency while maintaining their distance. The weird guy with the perfect memory who never forgot anything but never spoke about what he remembered. 5 years after that night, I drove past the Quick Check. New management, new staff, same fluorescent lights, same shelves where Lily had burst through the door. I didn't stop. Some places hold too much weight to revisit. Some memories are better carried than confronted. The storage box remained sealed in my parents' basement, evidence of a truth that would never matter, proof of crimes that would never be prosecuted, documentation of a predator who'd won by making his victims look like the dangerous ones. All of it gathering dust while he gathered new targets. I worked, I slept, I remembered. 3 actions that defined my existence now. No friends, no relationships, no future beyond the next shift. Just the weight of perfect recall in an imperfect world. My gift had become my anchor, dragging me down with knowledge no one wanted. The news eventually stopped covering the disappearances. Too many without resolution. No patterns the task force could identify. The boyfriend stepped down from his liaison role, citing the emotional toll. He was praised for his service. Another accolade for his growing resume of manufactured compassion. 10 years would pass before I'd see Lily again. A glimpse at a grocery store 3 towns over. Thin, medicated, supervised. She didn't recognize me, or pretended not to. The boyfriend wasn't with her, but his control was evident in every careful movement she made. A ghost of the girl who'd burst into the Quick Check seeking help. I didn't approach, didn't speak, just watched her shuffle through the aisles with a minder close behind. Whatever remained of the Lily I'd known was buried under years of systematic destruction. The friend who'd forgotten me after college had been erased entirely by something worse than forgetting. That night, I added her grocery store sighting to my mental catalog. Another data point in a pattern only I could see. Another piece of evidence that would never matter. Another reminder that sometimes the bad guys win by making the good guys look crazy. My parents passed eventually. Natural causes, peaceful ends to lives spent worrying about their son's mental health. I spoke at their funerals about their patience, their kindness, their refusal to give up on me. I didn't mention the truth they'd never believed. Some burdens shouldn't follow people to their graves. The family house sold quickly. I moved to a small apartment near the factory. Bare walls, minimal furniture, nothing that invited memory or connection. Just a space to exist between shifts. A place to sleep without dreams of photos and timestamps and women who'd vanished. The boyfriend's empire grew. A non-profit organization. Training programs for law enforcement. University lectures on victimology. He'd transformed from predator to expert. From hunter to protector in public perception. The perfect evolution of a successful manipulator.